Hello, everybody.
Hey.
Welcome, welcome.
Hello.
Joining us. Hello, Joey.
How's it going?
Amazing. So
So excited.
excited to be here with you today. This is our beautiful special guest, everyone. This is Joey Miller. So we have done Geo 1, 2, and 3 together. We are the most rooted and connected souls. She's another member of our soul tribe, and we are just so honored and blessed to have Joey grace our conversation today. I mean, she is a goddess and a shaman of Mother Earth's magic. She is Gaia's master alchemy artist. Joey is just so profound in the way that she connects to humanity, to the world, to Mother Nature. It is just watching magic unfold all the time. And because of that, of the power that she possesses and her beautiful wisdom, I think she's just going to add so much value to our conversation today. And our conversation is around fear, right? Fear, releasing fear around ascension, energy healing, and spiritual growth. Like, really, just do you want to learn how to overcome fear on your professional development journey, right? On your journey to wholeness. And that's what we're talking about. So, I guess the first question is, how is it related to spiritual growth? We want to talk about that. And I think each one of us are going to kind of share a little bit of our journey and how fear we've experienced it, how it shows up, and how we've overcome it. So for those hopping on now, or even if you're catching this mid conversation, really it's like fear is relevant to all of us and in all parts of our life. And how would you define fear, right? So if we define fear, according to dictionary.com, fear is a distressing emotion aroused by impending danger, evil, pain, whether the threat is real or imagined. And I think that's key. Whether the threat is real or imagined. And it's the feeling or condition of being afraid. And we'll notice automatically from that definition, that's a lower vibrational frequency. We'll just start the conversation there. And another definition, according to Ian Van Zandt, is fear is the acronym for false expectations appearing real. See, again, that real or imagined. So now that we understand the definition of fear, I think maybe I can throw the ball into Ashley's court, and then we'll go to Joey. Just, how is fear relevant to you and relevant to spiritual growth and professional growth? Yeah.
All right. So thank you everyone for joining us. Joey, I love you. I'm so excited that you're here.
Oh, I'm so honored to be in your presence.
So really excited to talk about this because I just have noticed with my own personal practice and then stepping into a healer space and helping others, there's a lot of fear that comes up just around the unknown, right? Like what can I expect with this? What's going to happen? And it just kind of comes out of nowhere because it seems so unfamiliar. But I think the relevance to spiritual growth is that it's so integral to the journey. Embracing it as it comes up and shifting the perception to understanding that fear and that kind of energy can be utilized for spiritual growth. It could be utilized for personal growth. It could be transformed and transmuted, right? Because that's what energy is. Even, then that's what we're here to do. We're here to elevate. So that would be my 2 cents around the relevance to spiritual growth. So needed, so necessary. but it takes a little bit of understanding and shifting of perceptions to really, move into that space of using it for spiritual power and growth and understanding your divinity. So, Joey, what do you think?
Wow, I definitely feel so honored to be here today. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
I completely got into energy work because of fear. And I find it very relevant as a healer, as a grid worker, as a shamanic practice healer. It is so expressive. Like a lot of times from my personal self, I found I would hide what I was afraid of and just shine a big smile. And guess what? After so many years, my body couldn't take, my nervous system couldn't take it anymore. It started coming out in different body elements of what I really found with time was I could listen deeply about pain in my body. And it took years to really get to the ability to, as soon as that pain starts, ask, what is the reason for this? And in the very beginning, I found if I could find the thought I had as I had an accident, breaking something or hurting my ankle or stubbing my toe, if I could go back to that thought in that moment, that was the answer. So I do find it very relevant that these heavy things or light, are they past, present, future? All of it is so relevant to get centered and just feel, is this real? Is it now? Oh no, this actually happened to my grandma. This is just so exciting that we can do the weaving of the thread. Where does it go? Is it entangled? Because usually the fear is a childhood trauma, inherited in our DNA and in the land. I mean, we are in a soup of energy on this planet today. So I think it is extremely relevant. Thank you.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And I would absolutely agree that it's relevant. I think fear highlighting, it's so funny here, and I always randomly interrupt, but because all of a sudden, clearly this conversation was needed and necessary. Earlier before we started, I had seen 11:11 right when I had sent the link to Joey. And so just as Joey got done speaking, so some people understand my gift of sight. So literally Joey's energy is like popping off to the side, and I just see her energy to my right, just floating in the air. And that sometimes will happen when you have people's energy that is just so potent. So I had to highlight that for many of you who are sensitive to energy, you may feel this deeply or intensely. Some of you may just hear one of us talk and you may cry or get emotional. Trust me when I tell you, it's okay. That's beautiful. It's needed. It's necessary. It's all part of this process. And bringing that back to this notion of fear, I think when you do grow up in trauma, as many of us have, where I have grown up with a lot of trauma, the fear is the underlaying of all that we've known, right? Fear of not being protected, fear of not being safe, fear of the unknown, of what could happen next, or if I do this, what would happen? Fear of change, maybe fear of losing your identity of who you are. So fear shows up, right, in so many ways. These are our common fears. And fear of, like, when you have, for me, I had complex post-traumatic stress, this fear of always having my antennas up, right? Looking at, oh my gosh, what could happen next? Or who could hurt me? Or who could attack me? Or how do I keep myself safe? Or, you know what I mean? So I think that just that understanding of fear and the fear of the unknown. My mom, was raised very strict Catholicism. That was her thing. And not by choice. That was just her upbringing. But she didn't impose that on us. But that fear of us, she had always wanted us all to be baptized, and we didn't. And my sisters and I just thought about, let's do it just to honor her now that she's passed and transitioned, even though that's not part of our necessarily belief system. But her fear was if we were not baptized, that we would go to hell. That, you know what I mean? Like, we would be in this abyss. And what I've learned to be true, that for me, that doesn't exist. That's not real. That's just another fear tactic to keep individuals afraid and coerced into doing certain things or behaving certain ways. But that's just my belief, and that doesn't have to be true for anyone. And I always encourage you to tap into your own beliefs and your own thoughts, but just make sure that they're really yours and not your upbringing. And also, the relevance too is the impact of fear on your professional growth and your professional journey, professional development, your overall wellness, your journey to wholeness, healing yourself from the inside out. The impact of fear, it can hinder how much you're able to grow, how much you're able to unfold, how you are able to ascend in your healing journey, right? Because you'll kind of hit this plateau. And I think when, as all of us are master energy healers, we work with different clients that may hit that plateau for a while because fear is embedded or ingrained in who they are. And it's really hard for them to move beyond that. But as we see them expand, even if it's tiny bits, right? Faith, everybody has fear, but you find courage by having faith, right? That's exactly what courage is, doing something even though you're afraid. And all of our clients, when we work with them, we see like once you get a little glimpse of that hope, it's kind of like Ashley's portal. You see that little bit of hope there. The ascension and the elevation and the things that will show up that much more profound. And so that means your frequency can go higher. You can experience things maybe you never have before. But what's the flip side? You're limited, right? You're not expanding as much as you could or should. But again, we all have divine timing, and you're exactly where you're meant to be, even though you want to be somewhere else on your ascension journey. I know Ashley and I talk about all the time. We want instant gratification, or we want things to happen right now, or we want to be in a different space and place. So I think that's where all of that connects, right? Understanding how to define fear, see it, understanding that we all have common fears, and that the impact of fear is really a limitation on all that God has meant for us and wants for us and has created in this beautiful experience, connecting that mind, body, soul journey to wholeness is just profound. So Ash, for you, can you tell me an example of how fear has showed up for you and how you kind of overcame that on this healing journey?
Well, that's a big question. I think the best way for me to approach this is I don't think I've ever, until recently, experienced life without fear. And after really starting on this spiritual journey, I started doing a lot of work around my birth. And it was a very traumatic birth. So I kind of knew that, my whole existence in this incarnation was just rooted in that fear. In gestation, my mom had just a very traumatic experience, which imprinted on me because I was about 6 months along. And then had a traumatic birth experience, was 50-50 chance to survive. Luckily I made it, and by divine I made it and survived and was able to thrive, through even a mild case of cerebral palsy, which is a disability that you get at birth. So as I started to unravel this in my spiritual journey, I did really realize that my frequency was so familiar to fear, right? It was really honed in on fear. I don't think I had ever been outside of that space. And the only way I was really able to start and begin overcoming being just scared to be here in my body, because that's what it felt like. Like I just didn't want to be in my body. I, had this kind of perpetual out of body experience my whole life, right? So overcoming that was understanding a deeper sense of my identity, my spirituality, my journey, my destiny. And it has unfolded so beautifully that my identity, like I think I went through that stage of being fearful of losing myself, but then understanding that whole persona that I experienced, I needed to lose that in order to now align with my true identity as a divine spiritual being. So overcoming that fear of change, overcoming, I find that I love the unknown. So I really didn't have that fear. I'm like, let me just go into this portal. Right. So that fear of change, or like if I do this, am I going to lose who I am? What I've built, what I've, beliefs that have stood, so long in my life, and able to overcome that through different modalities, understanding the history of spiritual practices, religion. Where did it even come from? Why is it even rooted in the beliefs that it's rooted in? For what reason? So, asking those questions, setting my intention to just seek the truth, led me into understanding a lot of these religious institutions today perpetuate certain beliefs, based on the cultural norms of that day. And I mean, you can have examples like the Inquisition, and the guillotine was used a lot to coerce people, right? So spiritually, right? So it was just built up, based on cultural relevance at the time, and I was able to let that go and dive deeper into the truth. Secondly was, finding Qigong practice. So finally, I was able to start grounding in my body when I started doing Qigong. And then to top it all off, it was the Geo Love journey. That was like the last piece that I needed to start integrating to understand how really sensitive I am. And, these are actually gifts. They're not things to be feared. They're actually my stepping stone, my portal, my gateway into becoming more whole on the journey, right? So that would be my example of getting over these fears and just, trusting more. And it does happen just step by step by step by step. And it's contrary to that whole instant gratification mindset that we're indoctrinated with, through the use of technology, right? Spiritual practices do not fit in that realm. So, they don't. So it's just step by step, having these conversations, talking about it, dispelling, the things that we were taught, through our family and generations, of fear, passing it down. And, it was justified at a certain point in time, right? But do we have to continue? Do we have to continue to perpetuate those energies or those beliefs? So, yeah, that's my piece.
Yeah.
Joey, come in here, girl. What you got to say?
Following you, that's a whoa. I'm on the horse. Let's go.
That's
Okay.
right.
So for myself, my first dyslexia, they found it at kindergarten, which I was very lucky. It was the first year in the small town in the 80s. They had a teacher her first year. They basically witnessed I was writing everything backwards, reading backwards. I was told at that time, you're a very old soul. This is why you do this, which I thought was really spectacular that they even had that insight back in the 80s. But for instance, when you when you have dyslexia and you feel like everybody else gets it, but you don't, it becomes this big spiral of not enough. And that wheel continues. So, school was very difficult for me, but what I did find of the beautiful gift of it was before I would go to school, I would go play with the animals for 30 minutes or go for a walk, get in nature, get my shoes off. I'd run around on the grass, maybe not in the winter, trained horses in the winter in Illinois. So not all the times the shoe got to be off, but holding big animals, finding the love in nature and the rhythm gave me a confidence when I went to school. It gave me a peace, and I always knew I could go back outside. And luckily, our teachers were very nice. But, fast forward into junior high, my parents broke up. I was thrown off the farm. That was the abandonment that I was inherited also, going to 4 years ago when I learned also sacred geometry with these ladies. The first class that we all got together, I knew it was an inner child healing that I needed. It was so deep of a sorrow of a hole that I was trying to fill for a long time. And, 10 years before that, I had one of the top salons. I am an artist. I love creating. I've remodeled 6 places. I love buying property and remodeling. So I have these great skill sets when it comes to envisioning, because being dyslexic, I found doing hair, it was the best gift ever because I could flip things around because my brain likes to do it naturally. So Tasmanian devil is definitely the energy with kindness and love is the spiral of myself. I witness the beauty of what it is. Still to today, I have to use the tools, calming my nervous system down. And the tools have been the most prominent thing that I would notice when I was a kid. If I could get outside, I could find my way through school. But if I skipped getting that peace, and when I got home, I would play outside again. And I know this is such a gift. I know I was very privileged to have all this at my fingertips. The soul contract was definitely right. And with the present day, oh my gosh, 3 years ago, after working with everybody, learning the sacred geometry, I found out I had cancer. I had a dream about it at the actual Geo Love when we were learning. And I knew that I wanted to work on it. I had learned these gifts. I had that deep shamanic. I went and did ayahuasca in Peru, and talk about learning to go through your psyche. I trained in meditation and journaling for 9 months before I even went. So I guess why I'm bringing all this up is I've always enjoyed, because I became addicted to the adrenaline rush of fear from the childhood. I would make myself go do adventures on the farm because I told myself, if there is one thing I'm afraid of, which is reading out loud, everything else I'm going to be good at. And I better be good at it. So I had a perfection problem, definitely. And, but when I boil it down to that beautiful perspective, at 18, I went to Australia by myself and had my first awakening on Ayers Rock. I did every adventure I could have, but the Ayers Rock experience, I knew that that was it. That was the time. The whole world opened up. I've always been an empath. I used to go to beautiful Native American burial areas around the United States. That was part of what we did with my family. We were so connected, and I always felt just deep sorrow and just cry and just fall to the ground sometimes. And my family are like, well, she's the artist. That's the weird one of the family. But the reality was they didn't feel it. They blocked everything out, and I felt everything. Very grateful for that thermometer, for the polarity stick, because without that extreme, not to say you can't find your way, You can. But that pump is real. And that sorrow I felt, I allowed my heart to open so much more. And that's what I've been in the process for the last, I don't know, what am I, 47? Yeah, I'm 47. But I would say I've been really studying this body for 10 years, mind, body, and soul.
Wow. That is so beautiful, Joey. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I feel like hearing you talk, I'm like, oh my gosh, this notion of not feeling like enough.
Yeah.
You know, my mom was pregnant at 15 with me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, I'm lying. My mom had me at 15. I was like, wait, I was pregnant when my son at 15. I had him at 16. But my mom had me at 15. Very traumatic. You know, my grandmother threw her out. God bless her. She's in heaven now. You know, first time of an engagement like that, had no clue. And then there she is out in the world pregnant with me. So I think that's where the never enough. Also, the first oldest child, you know, have siblings. And I'm a Virgo. So all of those things in terms of never feeling enough, but also connected to this notion of perfectionism.
Yeah.
I've always had this deep desire and yearning to be perfect at everything. Because if I didn't do it perfectly, that means I wasn't doing it enough. I didn't work hard enough. I didn't strive enough. I didn't overcome enough, you know, and hearing you say that is so beautiful in terms of even your awareness. And simultaneously, I think Ashley and myself and those of you who will probably watch this video can also relate to being the black sheep, being considered the weird one, the one that doesn't fit in, the one that's too much or too dramatic or too way out there, or your thoughts are too big, or you're too happy, or you have too much energy, or you're just too, right?
Yeah.
And having felt like that my whole life, where people are like, oh, you're just too much. You're just the most, like, you're too vocal. You're too opinionated. You dance too hard, or just like, but really that was part of who we are.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how your dynamic of fear played out,
Mm-hmm.
where it was this gauge, right? And you're re-remembering your growth, your reawakening. And it is interesting too, because you mentioned this, all of your family had numbed things out. They didn't allow themselves to feel that or experience that. And I would say in my family, for example, my sister Jamie, when she was little, we had a very traumatic upbringing. And, you know, my dad had kidnapped me and my sisters when we were young after my parents separated. And Jamie was always a very, very sensitive little girl, like hypersensitive. And probably a very, very deep empath. But because of the trauma, I feel like my sister built these walls around her and then turned everything off, you know, because the root of that is fear. She didn't want nothing else to hurt her, you know, nothing else to just disregard her feelings, right? So don't have them anymore. And I heard you say that, where you're like, oh, I was able to feel it so profound. And I feel like for me, even though I've experienced so much trauma, I still somehow, God gave me the grace to still have that empathic piece on. And I think it is a defining piece of who I am. But it also means that when I'm in a room of people, on average, I'm going to feel things so much more deeply, like 1,000 times over compared to the next person, because they've shut that part of themselves off. And I think that's the other piece of fear, is like healing that, right? We say letting it go, and we say that like it's so just willy-nilly, right?
Right.
Just
drop it like a package.
Right. Yep, you're out of here. That's the beauty with whether it's therapy, which works on healing the past, which is coaching, which is where you are right now and where you're going to go, and energy healing, which shifts that in the speed of light.
Mm-hmm.
Why many people choose energy practices and healings, because it will help it come in and through your body and be released so quickly that it then now takes your mind and body to catch up. But it doesn't take 10 coaching sessions, and you don't really have to feel or experience all of that. So I think, yeah, all of your points are just so relevant, because many of you that are watching this, you know, you can definitely tell us in the comments what your first experience with fear was. You know, how do you relate with being the person who never fit in, or, you know, always was too much? Or people, you know, said, oh, you know, you put you as bipolar or ADHD, or, you know, they didn't understand the beauty of your energy, you know, and they didn't understand why God gave you all of that amplification and how it can be used in such a beautiful way to serve people, you know? Yeah, I think that's my thoughts around that, but I just think it's just all so connected.
Brandy, do you mind if I add one thing about that?
Oh, please add anything.
So, you know, the discovery, when I found out I had cancer, you know, it was, what a day that was. What was so profound was to go through, yes, get healings from others, but also to really deep dive into that inner child and to really witness. And I think, you know, it depends on each person. When you're meditating and you're bringing through this inner child, bring in that picture of that inner child. I have a picture of myself, and my hair is all crooked and short. I was the tomboy I always wanted to be. I was so proud of myself. But what is really cool is to like really feel the love for yourself. And at first, it's extremely uncomfortable. You can do mirror work, you can do picture work, because your heart doesn't know the past or the present. Past, present, or future. You know, it is just a feeling. It is an emotion. So, you know, you can draw in that emotion or stare into your own eyes in the mirror. And at first, it's very uncomfortable. So start with like little pieces. Do enough where you're successful so you continue to play with that thread. It's very important. If we all take it too seriously, which it is serious, but love is the answer. So there's a quality of a bounce. Like, yes, this is heavy, but let me add something light afterwards. Oh, wow. Oh, wait a minute. It's back there. I'm not holding on to it anymore. I got to start running instead of feeling pulled back from that heavy experience like mud on your feet. You know, really, this work is so profound. And I found a lot of what was in my body was inherited. And this is an unraveling for, you know, it can be an unravel as long as you want. This is an infinity experience as the soul. We're going to go as far as you want. If it's uncomfortable, you get to stay in that same ring. But boy, what's in the center? And I'm a seeker, so that is my mission, is to find the center always.
Wow, that sounds so familiar to Ashley. What's the root of things?
Right.
Yeah. And I love that. And I do, Joey is one of those people, and I can say even for me, I'll always hear your voice about make it fun.
Yeah.
You know, play, be light. And your messages always, I remind myself, it's okay, Brandy, you don't have to take it so serious. You know, let it be light, let it be playful, let it be fun. And I'm like, gosh, that feels so much better than me just trying to, you know, like, nope, my very hyper masculine energy. Nope, we got to do this. We got to, we have to, you know what I mean? Like, it's so much nicer and lighter to play and to have fun. And I think understanding when you feel that feeling of fear, you know, think about when you're driving in a car and all of a sudden a car like stops right in front of you and you get that like shock in your system. I've been aware of this lately, just like, you know, and like the fear will kind of like feel it in your body, the flushness or the energy. So think about how that moment feels, that rush, compared to how light and airy it is. That's your awareness of the different frequency of how fun can this be. Let me explore, let me play. And I don't have to be all in either way. I think for many people who come from a faith-based background or a religious background, if you gave yourself permission to do what Ashley said, right? Ask questions, get curious. As sociologists, we're trained to question everything. That doesn't mean you don't have faith, right? What that means is that God gave you a brain and a mind and a heart and a body and a soul to be inquisitive, to question the social arrangements, because we also understand we're living in a human society, in a 3D world that we're all trying to ascend. That questioning is actually something God would want you to do, not just melt away in not having a thought or a mind of your own. You're the only unique individual in this world and in this planet. There's only one of you. So clearly, if you have questions or just question things, that does not mean that you are not in alignment with faith or God or Jesus or Allah or Jah or Shiva or, who and whatever you believe in. That, but it means that those prime creator given gifts you can use and experience in the world and do it with fun and with joy and with lightheartedness. I think that would be really, really important. And there was one other thing I wanted to ask you. No, but I think I do want us to kind of go down that rabbit hole of religion and faith and spirituality. But before we get there, and Ash, hopefully you'll kind of take the reins on that, and then Joey and I will kind of fill that in. But I remember at the Heartland when you did have your dream about having cancer, right? And, when we were talking with Oliver and Mandy, they were like, hey, just because you have the dream doesn't mean that it has to happen in this reality. It means that sometimes you had that dream so it will play out in a different plane or a different reality or a different way so that you don't need to experience it in your human body. And I think that is sometimes true, right? And other times when you have the gift of prophetic dreaming, some people get a lot of fear around prophetic dreaming. Like, oh, I dreamt this. Am I now going to make this come true? Or, oh, I seen someone's life ending. Am I supposed to share this? Like, say I have someone who's like, oh, I dreamt of a person and they were sick, but I've never told them because I don't know how they're going to receive me, or, they don't believe in that kind of stuff, or maybe I shouldn't be the messenger. That's also where fear shows up. But I think for you, it is a perfect testament to you created awareness around it. You communicated about it. And then when it showed up in terms of 3D, like them saying, hey, yes, you have breast cancer, still didn't take that on as your complete identity or any of that. You're like, this is just another experience that I'm having.
This is purpose. Yeah.
Right.
Felt much purpose.
Right.
The moon even told me we had so many trees in our yard, which was so beautiful in Washington, but a full moon setting in the ocean at the Olympic Mountains told me, yes, you do have it. And this is your purpose. And your purpose is to work with the energy that you already know how to heal. And you're going to go through the DNA of your ancestors and heal the trauma. And my family, after I have a long story of this path, so we won't say the whole path. But the coolest thing about this whole experience has been to see the change in my family also, not just in myself. And that is the sacred geometry. Energy healing with the ancestral healing is huge. I think that I love that is the mission. And it really is so deep. And also to be able to help with the geometry. And this is one of my specialties, creating in, like, as my sister's husband passed 3 months ago, my sister had, she'd been basically taken care of for a really long time. So she didn't know where anything was. They had been sick for 4 years. It was to be quite honest, it was like a hoarding experience, because when you're in that much pain, you just drop everything and you just keep buying stuff because you don't realize what you have because you're in so much pain. I know this. And I had so much empathy from my family, and I gave up. I just took off. I was there the next day. But my point of all this is, if you bring in sacred geometry, the prayer, the purpose, the grounding, you can assist in the chaos. And it was so obvious that it worked. And we're so much better since. My sister is so much better. Just meaning having a center. I felt my sister had kind of lost her footing for a while, literally. Her foot was almost cut off for 3 years. The energy work, just helping her heart to love herself, has been my prayer for her. My energy healing work for her has always been to love herself enough to eat. So it's a little emotional, because this has been my mission for a long time. Helping my family and to see results. I'm very grateful.
Yeah, you're a powerful, powerful healer. And your family is so blessed that you were the one to step up for them. You were the one that, unfortunately, it's a not heavy, but it's a difficult journey. It's not for the faint of heart.
No.
But you chose this.
Mm-hmm.
And God chose this for you to heal all your ancestors, past, present, and future.
It feels so good. And to have such a deep relationship with them, to call them in as they're about ready to do all the biopsies. I'm about ready to have so much pain, and I call in the guides and they take it from me.
Right.
There is a surrender that is real. It is so profound.
Yeah. I
had 17 biopsies, and that is not fun. So I'm honored to be doing this work.
They are not fun. I can respect and appreciate. I've only had one biopsy on my breast, and I had a papilloma. This is like years back.
Yeah.
And I thought I was just getting a biopsy, but then he found the papilloma at the same time. I wasn't even asleep, and cut it open and took it out,
Wow.
So my body was like in complete shock, and it was so much pain that my ex at that point was like, I don't understand why you're hurting so much. Like, I've had biopsies before. They're painful, but not that. But I didn't know until I went back to see him in 2 weeks. He's like, oh yeah, I cut it out. I was like, oh, okay. But so not fun at all. But the beauty is, you had said you had called in, all of your angels, all of your guides, and to help support you during such a traumatic journey. And I love that you talked about sacred geometry, because what we understand is that sacred geometry is the language of God. Everything that you see comes from the creator, prime creator, God. And it is sacred geometry that is that connection. That's why we're able to heal so deep, so profound, so powerful, with testimony after testimony after testimony. And if I hadn't went through this journey myself, coming from my sociological scientific background, I'd be like, nah, that's not possible. That's not possible. Only God can do that. And the thing is, this is God. God works through us. We just happen to be vessels. All of us are just vessels to bring God's light and energy through us to do those things. And the same thing is, we bring in this notion of Jesus. If you would say Jesus Christ in our house, my mom would be like, don't use the Lord's name in vain, right? And she would always say that. And this notion of Jesus, if we think about bringing it back to this notion of like faith and religion, when Ashley and I were first having this question or this conversation, I was in the grocery store with a friend of mine who I've known since I was little. We used to do fun dances in front of the projects and whatever, but she's always been into the church. She's Pentecostal. And so always wears long dresses and things like that. And I'd seen her at the store, and I was like, hey, when I say energy or energy healing to you, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? And with her beautiful smile, she was like, yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, typically it'll be like demonic or the devil or negative, right?
Wow.
And considering this is my childhood friend, we always knew we had different, beliefs and faith practices, but we loved each other regardless. But I was like, wow, do some of the people like see or think that when I say this to them, when I communicate this to them, when I mention energy healings? And so me and her, we had this conversation. Natalie was on the phone, kind of in the background. And how, if you think about Jesus was a hands-on healer.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are connected to Christianity or the church and the notion of Jesus, you then historically have this understanding that he used energy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? God is energy. God is the only thing that can be omnipresent at all places, in all spaces, at all times simultaneously. The only thing that can do that, the only essence, is energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus was a hands-on healer. He was using his hands and energy, sacred geometry, through his body as a conduit to help heal people. So if Jesus can use energy and as a form of energy healing, why can't other people believe that it's not negative or not demonic or not sinful or bad to use God's energy, Jesus, who practiced the same practices of intention-based healing? And, so I guess my question, Ash, is, considering prior to this notion of Christianity, what are some thoughts you want to add just in that connection between spirituality, spiritual growth, energy healing, and I think faith or religious ideologies?
Well, it's a interesting topic to go down. I grew up in multi kind of religious family, multicultural. So I learned about meditation at a very young age. I also, had experience with church. And, just I'm like an antenna. So none of the practices really just made full sense to me. I could see where, it could help in certain situations, but I could also see where it was hindering in certain situations. And then my mom always telling me, like, I used to ask her, I'm like, why do you go to church? Because she's, Radha Swami. And she's like, well, I just go and listen to the word because it resonates. All of these religious practices, the common denominators are universal law, right? So when you start kind of delving into why these religions even came into existence in the first place, you start really going down this path of clearing out, specific cultural, societal stuff that was going on, and it was influencing spiritual doctrine, right? So, I mean, mainstream religion today, in my opinion, has just things that are missing, things that have been taken out. So it's a little bit more confusing to the person versus getting an understanding of who you are and your identity and how to actually understand your spirit, how it works, and how to optimize it. And if you really go back far enough, like ancient civilizations, they just knew, or their whole purpose was cultivating spirit. Right? So a lot of these practices that mainstream religion mirrors are those ancient practices where it was very holistic. We knew who we were, and mainstream religion has kind of just segmented it a little bit. So my search back to the root of things, led me to read The Maduna Ter by Rana Thurman I. And I encourage everybody to read his work, because I align with his purpose in understanding how these ancient cultures, they were synergistic in their spiritual, evolution, right? And teaching others how to evolve spiritually and connecting the dots. So yes, there were cultural differences between, these civilizations, but the main concept was spiritual evolution. How can I be a better person? How can I be a more, bring forth my divinity? And a lot of that was lost throughout, many, many years of just watering down and not really understanding what spiritual practices are for, and certain energies taking over to control and coerce groups of people versus the upliftment of our whole civilization. Right? So this has, influenced our belief systems, our norms, the way that we, understand and relate to one another. It has impacted us on a very universal or world level. And the practices that we're talking about that have so much fear cast around them, the basic intention for them was to heal, was to move and shift this energy of fear or any lower vibrational emotion, right? Like Joey so perfectly said, like she was able to move the energy using specific practices and see results, right? So I'm sure throughout our recent history, there are certain people who, wanted to stop that from happening, right? To lose that power within the individual, that sovereignty, so they could be controlled, right? And this is where a lot of the beliefs around these spiritual practices even stem from. I mean, healers in our society, even in our recent history, midwives, they were cast out, right, as witches, right, because they were healers, right? And there's so many different examples you can bring up that were demonized or looked down on because of that fear of the unknown. They, whoever took over at the time didn't understand the wholeness of, quote, magic or healing, or, the ability to perform miracles, right?
Yes, definitely.
So, just starting to unpack it by understanding the history around modern, religious institutions, setting the intention to get some clarity around it, doing some readings of the Maduna Ter. I mean, if you want to dive straight in, I definitely recommend that. And then bringing in, more and trusting more that, these practices are already within us, already within our DNA, just ready to be and waiting to be reawakened, right? To be activated, because we are trying to become whole again, right? We've just gone through a period of disconnection, and without judgment, and I know this is a hard one, because this is what we've been taught through religious doctrine, is judgment, shame, guilt, fear. All of those emotions are lower vibrational emotions, and put you in a position to be controlled by whoever's giving you whatever thought, belief. It could be generational, so, without any judgment, without starting to feel bad that, oh, I never knew this, or I should have known this earlier, because I was like, oh, how did I not know this information? Searching out of it, I was able to start trusting my own intuition by being led to these different practices that a lot of people around me were like, oh, don't do that. You know, a lot of leaders in these institutions, oh no, don't go down that hole. You should do it this way. Right. So eliminating that trusting in your innate self, that you're on your own path, you're walking, you know, your own unique journey, and, you know, just, yeah, cultivating that trust. So these spiritual practices, if you're being drawn to them and the fear is coming up, that is probably a really good sign, because it's coming up to be released.
Yes.
Right? You're no longer in this kind of trance and just being, you know, doing what you're told, right? You are now entering into this phase of transformation, and you're being pulled, your energy is being pulled, magnetized to change. And I know that sometimes is fearful, but in all of our examples that we've given, once we have the courage, right, and we see others doing it, right, and we have the example in front of us, we can face that fear. We can walk through it and create more space for ourselves, for more expansion, more growth, meeting the people that we need to meet, like our soul sisters, our soul brothers, right, that make it all worthwhile, right?
Yes.
So navigating that fear, you know, is where, you know, practitioners come into place, other healers, listening to other people's stories, right? And I mean, right now in today's world, I think discernment is probably the biggest thing, right? Because you want to gravitate towards people that are authentic, right? That have, you know, personal growth, or examples of personal growth in their own lives, and how they're dealing with their own issues and sharing it, and just being open and honest, you know. And when you feel that kind of energy, then you have that healthy discernment, like, okay, yes, you know, I know, Brandy, you watched a video the other day and it kind of just took you, and it was like that discernment. And we've had a few examples, Brandy and I, of this, that discernment kind of went out the window, right? And then when it comes back in, you're like, yeah, actually, I probably should have paid more attention to that, right? And chose a bit differently. But this is how life teaches us. So, hey,
right.
be open.
Most definitely. The path is real. The path is real.
And not making decisions out of fear. You know, I know Mandy Morris always talks about that. Don't make decisions out of fear. Make them out of love. Like the fear of, oh, what if I don't have this figured out already? Oh, what if this could come up? Or, oh, I don't have a plan in place. Like, you can't make those decisions out of fear. You have to make them out of faith. And using that discernment, I think, is a really key component to that. You know, fear has popped up time and time again. And it's okay to be afraid, right? Because anyone in your circumstance, that fear is normal. The fear of, for example, my sister Christy wouldn't even sage our own house because she was still scared of what she might open up. She felt like, or, you know, she's like, oh, this is unknown. Now, mind you, my sister does not identify as a healer in any way, shape, or form, but she is definitely a healer just naturally. And not realizing she's already practiced without that, but her fear was real. We had to acknowledge it. We had to understand it. And now, okay, how can you become more grounded? How can you tap into your spirit and, you know, that you are safe and you're okay, and that you're practicing only, my dogs are being silly, love and light, you know? That's why for us, we set those boundaries. We only work with love and light, and that's it. Because we want to be on a higher vibration and a higher frequency. So understanding, you know, and questioning, and also understanding how it's all connected, right? We're all energy Come here. Come here, Rosie. We are all energy. We are all one. We are all a fractal of source and a fractal of God. So it's like, if that is all running through our body and our cells and our DNA, then even when fear pops up, we know that we are divinely guided, we are divinely protected, that we have a whole crew of just angels and archangels and ascended masters and master spirits that are just here to guide us and love us and support us in our unfolding, in our unraveling, even if we don't have it all figured out, right? And sometimes even questioning why, this is the one thing I think, like, I said, like, why would God say we were all born in sin, right? How could God think that, or have this belief, or be a vengeful God to want to hurt you when you are part of the fractal of them in their creation? Not love. Love is the only real thing that exists. That's the only real thing. Everything else is a contrast. It's a mirror reflection to know what isn't. Showing you what is. And so the whole notion of, sin, and when I was talking to my friend at the grocery store, when I asked her that question, when she heard energy or healing, she was like, yeah, they'd think it in the church, they'd say it's demonic or whatever. And something happened with the register. It like messed up. And she's like, see, already, that's the devil right there showing up. I was like, well, what if
that's your perspective of truth? Everybody gets their diamond.
That's true. I was like, well, what if, right? What if that isn't the devil?
Yeah. Maybe
what if that was God just giving you a break for 5 seconds so you could take a deep breath?
Yeah.
And since you've been scanning groceries for hours, what if that was God's way to just allow me and you to have this conversation of questioning and wonder with love and mutual respect for one another? Because we're not here to question anyone's faith or religion or belief. We honor and respect everyone's ideas and faith and notions and upbringing. That's not why we're here. But I was like, but what if God just gave us a few more moments for us to be together and have these conversations and just be in each other's presence? And the smile on her face was so beautiful and just warm and glowing. And I'm like, what a contrast to her feeling like, or having that thought like, oh, the devil did this right now because we're having this conversation or whatever, their devil's always out to get me. That's like a constant PTSD antenna. You're just waiting for the world to get you, where that doesn't have to be true.
And you're pulsing it out 500 times stronger than even your brain. We are magnetic. This is, so it's like, ooh, center. So nice. I would like to throw a little in on that myself too. When it came to growing up Catholic, definitely raised in the community of the Catholic Church. My mom went, and I didn't have to go to Catholic, like the actual school, but I did go to Catholicism on Sundays. So, in the beginning, when I was first being taught, I was like, oh yeah, this feels good. And then once I hit teenage years and my parents got divorced, all I heard in the church is, you're going to go to hell. And I was like, now, wait a minute. I had nothing to do with this. Why is it I'm in trouble? I just found a lot of times I got curious whenever that wall would hit, like, but wait a minute. Let's feel into this a little bit and see, like, is that my truth? Oh, no, it isn't my truth. But I do have so much respect for everybody having their path. And what I would tell my mom, I will go the days you would like me to go just to be with you and support you in your faith. But where my church is holding a tree, hiking in nature. And I don't think I went to a church just because of that feeling. I would get in there and I would feel uncomfortable versus feeling love. And I do understand people are raised in certain ways, and like my mom, I can feel when she is there that she feels love. Like there's a difference. Being a beautiful shaman and a energy healer that has been incarnated a few times, the Catholic Church is very uncomfortable for this beautiful soul. So I went for my mother a few times in my adult life. But what I really found was that the elements that create our whole body, the church doesn't usually talk about that as much. And so for, any people out there that are searching in their heart, like, I want to find a path, but this path doesn't feel quite right. I also agree that I think there's a truth to parts of all religion that do have the harmony of source energy. And I'm really sending respect to that. But there is also so much more in this Pandora's box of guidance. And I would just really find out where your comfortable space is. Is it just in a deep feeling your heart and feeling your soul? Is it just that connection to source? Is it a natural thing that helps you feel that modality, that deeper love, music? Just, there's so many ways to play with it. But yes, the fear is real if you allow your heart to be closed. If it is open, you're connected and you'll find your path to where you're supposed to be.
I love
Blessed be, and so it is.
Yes, blessed be, and so it is. And I love that you mentioned, hold on one second.
Oh, look at that little one.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that, Joey. So beautiful. And I mean, we're testaments of just coming from this observing, something that just doesn't really align, and then asking the question, right? Like, this doesn't really make sense. If this is this, then why is it contradicting this? And then why is this contradictory? And, I think a lot of those institutions, and it's no fault of their own. It's just, the way that they don't really understand how to explain spiritual science. So it makes sense to people. And maybe it was on purpose, maybe not, right?
Yeah.
But on this journey of just seeking truth and understanding of, who and what we are, just to set that intention will lead you down a path of more clarity. It will lead you to a book. It will lead you to a video like this.
Yes. Thank you, Ash, for picking that up, and for my niece who just loves to get group hugs and join in the fun.
She's a little star waiting to happen.
She
is already a star.
Such a little angel on earth, such a star seed, such an indigo child. It is profound to just witness the magic that little girl has. And Ash, you talked about a book. So for me, you had said the Maduna Tear. And so also for me, what really helped me expand this notion of love, because when it came to religion and faith, I knew I always had a profound relationship with God. It was unwavering. But I did not have a relationship, and I didn't need to be in a church. I've been to different churches because I grew up in a very multicultural family. So we have different religious practice, faith-based practice, spiritual practices. But I went to a variety of different churches. But what I couldn't resonate with was anything that was not rooted in love. And I struggled when I was, and my mom actually struggled when my ex, who she got killed, she fell in front of a train in Brooklyn right before my mom passed away 8 years ago now, and 9 years ago. How old's my son? 9. Yeah. So wow, it's been 9.5 years.
Wow.
So, but my mom really struggled when I dated a female. I had a kid when I was very young. I had never, the stereotypical things. But when I connected with my ex, like I used to be like thinking in my head, because my mom, grew up very religious, I guess, in some parts. That in my mind, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to go to hell. Like, God probably doesn't like me. It's weird how there's an echo shows up. How funny. But having said all that, I eventually read The Course in Miracles, and that was so just a game changer. Night and day, where you really understand. And I would encourage anybody to read The Course in Miracles. Please get the teacher's edition, because it's a very hard read. But it is so amazing that helps you understand that sin isn't real. That the only thing that really exists is love. And, because I used to question, I'm like, how could God not love me or think that I was a sinner because I loved someone? And it was the most purest love, the easiest love, the most gentle love I've ever experienced in my whole life. It was the one thing that felt so natural to me. And it blew my own mind how that could be. But I'm just a person who I just love who I love. And that's just it, And regardless of gender or any of those other societal norms. And going through the Course in Miracles and understanding that love is the only thing that really has been real for me, that I know in my heart that is true. But the book even solidified it. And I had an old work study student. And during the time I was reading that book, and she had multiple personality disorder. So she was about, I think, like 13 different personalities. It was the most fascinating experience for me to ever have, to get the pleasure of working with her. So I literally, somehow I brought the book up, and she's like, really, The Course in Miracles? And I was like, yeah. She's like, oh, look, I have it here in my bag. She was carrying the book around with her. Now, mind you, this book is like this thick.
Yeah.
So she's carrying the book around with her, and I'm like, wow, she's like, yeah. She's like, and I got to only page 17, and I've still been stuck because I can't believe something so beautiful could be true about me.
Aww.
Oh my gosh. And I knew right where she was talking about in the book. And I was like, God, you never make mistakes. Even when horrible things happen, like my mom is gone. They killed her. My ex, she fell in front of a train. Like, but God has never wavered. God has never left me. God, everything that has happened, God has done for a reason and a purpose. So it's just like, in God is love. And though it may seem painful and hurtful, the beauty that has come out on the other side, I probably wouldn't be here where I am today, being a healer, helping people, serving people in this capacity, using my spiritual gifts, my intuitive gifts, psychic medium gifts. Like, those things would not have happened if it wasn't for those traumatic losses. And then to have something that really helps you understand, like, and so with the Course in Miracles, from my understanding, it was like divinely channeled messages. And that's why I say the channeled messages, because I say sometimes I would go to a church and I'd be like, God, I needed this message today, for you. Sometimes you'd feel good. Other times you would go for your mom, but you know that they're also channeling too. That's when you're receiving the word. That's what channeling is. So even if you're a pastor, or a preacher, or a bishop, then they get those messages, right? So I think, to help you understand, they're tapping into spirit, they're tapping into source. But when it comes to the heavier or denser or non-loving or judgmental or shameful or fearful messages, that is what I want to say is not God. That is human conditioning. That is about power and control, and is actually just a mirror of what isn't. And I want you all to keep that in mind. You don't have to believe in something awful and horrific just to believe in something magical and beautiful. And God does not make mistakes. So it doesn't matter who you love, It doesn't matter how your gender performance is in the world. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. None of that matters. Only that you have love and you are love and you are a walking image of perfection. God does not make mistakes. Yes, are we all learning and growing and learning to love more and learn ourselves more? Yes. But that's what tapping in and channeling is. No matter if you're in a church, no matter if you're in the forest, in water, in a meditative state or practice, and in a monastery, as long as your heart is open and you have love, that is the way, the root of overcoming fear,
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Mm.
I'm freezing. I don't know. Do you think there's anything else? I mean, I know we have some suggestions on, I know, Joey, you've even talked about some of the suggestions or strategies on overcoming or ways to just release fear, So maybe Ashley and Joey, maybe you want to talk about some ways to overcome fear quickly?
Sure. Ashley, do you want to go first or do you want me to go? You got it.
Sure. I will. Well, we have some strategies here. I mean, our strategies are a mix of all of these things. I mean, I think God just allows us to use different tools, like you were saying, Joey, to bring in and to remind ourselves of our true identity. Mindfulness and meditation probably are the first two, that come up. I've done a lot of guided meditations. I think when we first met Oliver, we were looking for him to guide us so much. So I definitely, am behind just finding maybe a person, a healer that does guided meditations to kind of just, ease you into the process. And we have a guided meditation on our app, the Billionaires Triad. It's a grounding activation. And I think it's pretty relevant only because, when you're grounding, you're opening up your root chakra, and that, has a lot to do with fear and safety. So activating that root chakra, might help in pushing that energy and moving that energy in a positive way. So check out we'll drop it in the comments where you can access that free guided meditation. Next up would be what Joey talked about, sacred geometry and visualization. So powerful. Protection and grounding. And I mean, Joey, do you want to talk a little bit, because you use nature just so beautifully, and the geometry. So I'll just let you explain that a little bit as far as sacred geometry and visualization.
Yeah. Well, I think when it comes to, if you're in your meditation and you're wanting to connect and be really grounded, it's, doing that rhythm breath is so important. 3, 6, or 9. That's my favorite. Working with sacred numbers, what resonates with yourself. Starting off at a 3 is nice to just get the rhythm, so you open your all of your lungs and starting at the belly. So always working with that root first. But the envisioning, when we are calling in our angels and guides, we're expanding our energy up. I like to move my body. I am a very moving person. So I do not just sit and like I wish I could, but that's not my rule. So by calling in as much highest divine light, and that is connecting as a pillar of light, going down through the body and then going to the earth chakra, down through all the chakras, but we've got an earth chakra. I'm not sure if it's like 3 feet, 4 feet below us, like in the energy field, in the ground. That is available. That is so profound to connect your root, imagining a tree coming out of your feet, connecting to the earth chakra, being a tree and anchoring in your feet as roots to the core of the light of the planet. And it's really about just finding comfort in it. You know, when you're really beginning, you're just wanting to feel, what does it feel like to be so connected? To expand deeper in that breath and then exhaling out. And how long can you go with that exhale, with all breath out of the body? Because that pause is where you connect and you really feel that code, that download, that love, that expanded heart. So breath work, connecting with source and the core of Gaia is profound. That's where I would start with that. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. And that's a beautiful segue into like a Qigong practice.
Yeah.
Because the breath is like where it's at,
It
right?
sure is. And I studied Kundalini. So like when Ashley and I first met, we were like, she's like, I'm into Qigong. I'm like, I'm into Kundalini. So it's just so beautiful to see us both, 3-4 years later, developing new skills within those skills. It's just really a beautiful expansion.
I mean, Kundalini, I mean, we're just talking about energy. Chi is in, a certain language. Kundalini is in another language. It's just describing the same thing.
Yeah.
And you can, I do have an online course, Qigong course, if you want access to 2 free postures just to get that grounding started. If you're just getting into Qigong. So we'll drop that link as well in the comments so you can take a look at that. But Qigong practice for me has been life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
The breathing, and then in traditional Chinese medicine, if you do work with Qigong postures, there is an emotional release happening within the organs, right? And there's specific movements that you can use or do to get rid of the fear, and the kidneys govern fear, actually. So there are specific kidney exercises that you can do, and they're very simple, that you can start moving the energy out of your body, out of your organs, holistically. So I am a big fan of Qigong when it comes to that. It's simple, gets right to the point. You're addressing that base energetic, system, right? Physically, right? So you're doing it with Qigong, you're doing it with energy work and using sacred geometry, and then you're bringing in, the mindfulness and the meditation. So all of these beautiful practices that have come under so much scrutiny, actually, they're the key to freedom.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
So let's get rid of this fear, just take our time, right? Incrementally. As it comes up, you address it, take your time as far as self-love practices to really integrate, that new frequency and ground that new frequency. So so Brandy, do you want to talk a little bit about journaling? I know your coaching expertise comes in beautifully here. I'll let you.
So journaling is a big thing. For me, I can say my handwriting is terrible, so it's always hard when I go back to read it. But
same here.
Most of you can write legibly. Journaling is really an important tool. And I think to look back, so it's interesting that you say that, because right here is this beautiful golden little journal that I have. And in there, you'll see some of the most profound moments. Even my I am statements, I have like 50 of them right here. So journaling is so, so important. And when I go back and I look at some of these things, or I take notes during a healing and I'm journaling about the experience, whether I'm the healer or the healee, what my experience was, what their experience was, it's like, wow, this is incredible. Like some of the things that even come up, I'm like, where did this even come from? So I think just really journaling to explore, just acknowledging your fear, I think, is the first thing. And you
Mhm.
can do that so well in journaling, just acknowledging, like, hey, I feel this fear. This is why I feel this fear, or I'm afraid of, and
Mhm.
we have people do that when it comes to money and wealth, right?
Mhm.
You're getting to that root of what's your money blockages, or
Mhm.
where is fear trapped in my body and my chakras. Like,
Mhm.
journaling is going to really help you get clear on that and to help you then release it, because that's the goal. And I think when you are journaling, even if we're talking about the I am statements, that's a good method or a good technique to acknowledge what you're afraid of, and then to say, hey, I am confident. I
Mhm.
am strong. I am no longer afraid. I feel powerful. I feel trust. I feel intuition. And you can change your I am, I feel, I know, your I am statement based on, the different chakras in the body, if that's something a little bit more advanced that you do, um,
Mhm.
or I love my new confidence. I love being free from fear and worry, you know. Um, that would be like when you're using your heart chakra. So I
Mhm.
just think that's a really good method for you to use as you're acknowledging fear and then releasing it. Um, everyone's a coach.
Mhm.
I used to call in my old coaching practice everyone an LC, life coach. Why? Because you're the greatest coach of your own life. Coaches are just there to help you see your power, witness it, acknowledge it, and trust yourself enough till you can get it out. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? So you're the greatest coach of your own life. Begin to
Mhm.
start trusting yourself. And I know sometimes it's difficult and hard to trust yourself, especially when you're unfolding your spiritual gifts or your intuitive gifts. But you're an amazing coach. So trust yourself and coach yourself around it through that journaling experience.
Mhm.
And I think last to not least would be community support, right? We need
Mhm.
to connect to our community. Ash, do you want to talk a little bit about our community that we have in the Billionaires Triad?
Yeah, we're just beginning, to build this community. But we are working on our own app right now. It's a web-based app that you can access some free tools like that grounding activation, some qigong movements. There's daily affirmations that we're working on in there to fill out a whole year. So that's a work in progress. There's a community there that, we're going to be talking about different interesting subjects and introducing threads so we can start sharing and connecting and helping each other and, just have meaningful experiences of transformation and hold each other, lovingly accountable for our growth. That was one thing that I was very thankful for in entering a few communities that I'm a part of right now. It's that accountability piece, right? It's like, who are we going to be accountable for? We have to be accountable for ourselves. And when we're in, a space with other loving, sensitive empaths, it just makes the experience that much more beautiful. So I do encourage you guys, if you want to be part of this pioneering process of the Triad Ascension community, please join us. Let us know, introduce yourselves, and we would love to grow with you on your journeys to wholeness as well as ours, because we're all in this together. Just saying.
That's right.
We are all in this together. And I
Most
love that you said that, right? Um, and I just want to recap the 5 key strategies that we have. It's really mindfulness and meditation is number 1. Number 2 would be sacred geometry and visualization. 3 would
Mhm.
be energy healing practices, whatever ones work for you. Just choose one. Journaling is number 4, journaling for clarity. And number 5 is connect to a community for support. Those are going to be 5 strategies for you to release fear. Use
Mhm.
them, empower yourself, overcome fear. Because when you do, your future is so bright. Things that you could never imagine to be true for yourself. I know Ashley, Joey, and I are walking testaments or testimonies to things that we never thought were possible for us. So start that process. That's, I mean, if not now, when, right? Do one thing today to overcome fear. Just one. And I promise you that the journey ahead, your journey to wholeness, is going to be that much easier, more expansive, be filled with so much more fun and joy and play and happiness and abundance and wealth and wisdom, that you no longer have to be afraid of what lies ahead, right? You have to just be walking in gratitude for the greatness that is to come. Yeah. Any closing words from you, Joey or Ash?
Well, I think what you just said is just nails it. It's like we all have a day that where you start so simple, and it doesn't matter how far you are on your path. You can be tested, but how quickly can you witness when you're off? I call this is my adrenaline rush. When I used to do hair, if I felt a rush up to here, I would say, okay, zoom out and let's feel from a highest perspective, bird's eye view, what's causing this? And how can I shift it in that moment? Can I just get neutral as this passes by? Because there's nothing I can control but myself. Blessed be, and so it is.
Yes, Joey, that was perfectly said. And, you know, I do encourage anybody who's watching this, drop something in the comments if you have any questions. If you want to share your experience around fear, you know, we would love to interact with you. Any questions you might have, we're here to serve in the highest good. And any other topics you want us to talk about, anything that comes up for you, you know, break through that barrier of fear. Share in the comments. You might just help somebody else on their journey and give them the courage to step out and find their authentic selves.
So beautiful. And anyone who wants to connect with Joey going forward, we'll put her commentary or her, not commentary, her profiles and information in the commentary under the video. And Joey, just thank you so much for just adding your fairy sprinkle dust to this night.
Well, thank you all for your patience with me. I am, woo!
We are blessed to have you. And
thank you.
Yeah, we are so blessed. Like, this was a beautiful conversation. And I think you just made it so sparkly and fun and amazing. So we so appreciate you. You are the bestest soul sister ever.
Well,
thank you for always grounding us and rooting us and just cheering on and being here with us as part of the triad. It's just amazing. So thank you so much.
Well, let's do it again. You just let me know.
Definitely. Anybody add some questions in the commentary, and then we'll know what we need to talk about next, right?
All right.
Yes. All right, guys. I love you all. Thank you so much for joining us. You're amazing. And you're all loved unconditionally, right?
Yes.
We're all connected, and it's all connected.
Yes.
Thank you.